The restaurant buzzed with the familiar symphony of clinking glasses and murmured conversations, but Emily Chen heard none of it. She sat frozen in the crimson booth, watching her blind date's back disappear through the exit without so much as a goodbye. 20 minutes. That's all it had taken for him to decide she wasn't worth his time. The half-empty wine glass in front of her blurred as tears threatened to fall, and she gripped the table edge until her knuckles turned white. This wasn't just rejection, it was humiliation served with a side of public spectacle as nearby diners pretended not to notice her sitting alone, her carefully applied makeup now feeling like war paint for a battle she'd already lost. Emily had almost cancelled this date 3 times. After 18 months of focusing solely on her elderly father's cancer treatment, her best friend Sarah had practically dragged her back into the world of the living. "You're 28, not 88, Sarah had insisted, setting up this blind date with her colleague, Marcus. "Dad would want you to be happy." But as Emily sat there, abandoned before the appetizers even arrived, happiness felt like a foreign concept from another lifetime. She reached for her purse, ready to flee, when a gentle voice stopped her. "Excuse me, miss. Your date seems to have forgotten something important." Emily looked up to find a man standing beside her table. He was tall, perhaps in his mid-30s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and a 5-year-old girl clutching his hand. The little girl wore a purple dress with a grass stain on the knee and held a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. "I'm sorry," Emily managed, confused. He forgot that he was sitting across from someone brave enough to show up, vulnerable enough to hope, and clearly too good for him anyway. The man's smile was warm but his eyes held something deeper, understanding, perhaps even recognition of pain. "I'm Daniel Foster, and this is my daughter, Lily. We're at the next table, and we couldn't help but notice what happened." Nobody should eat alone after that kind of exit. Before Emily could respond, Lily piped up. "Daddy says that man was very rude. I think you're pretty. Your earrings look like little stars." Something in Emily's chest cracked open. She touched the delicate star-shaped earrings, the last birthday gift her father had given her before the diagnosis. "Thank you, sweetheart. Your elephant is very handsome. His name is Mr. Trunk. He goes everywhere with me, even to Daddy's important meetings." Lily giggled, and Daniel smiled apologetically. "She's not wrong. Last week, Mr. Trunk attended a board meeting at Foster Enterprises." He paused, then continued with surprising sincerity. "Look, I know this is unconventional, but Lily and I were just about to order. Would you consider joining us? No pressure, no expectations, just dinner with 2 people who think that guy was an absolute fool." Emily hesitated. Every instinct told her to run home, delete her dating apps, and never subject herself to this kind of rejection again. But something about Daniel's straightforward kindness and Lily's innocent warmth made her pause. Maybe it was the way he'd acknowledged her pain without pitying her. Maybe it was the fact that this successful-looking man seemed completely unbothered by his daughter's grass-stained dress and well-loved stuffed animal. Or maybe she was just tired of running. "Okay," she heard herself say. "But only if Mr. Trunk approves." Lily held up the elephant, pretended to whisper in its ear, then announced solemnly, "He says yes, but he wants extra bread rolls." As Emily gathered her things and moved to their table, she caught Daniel's expression, relief mixed with something that looked almost like recognition. She wouldn't learn until much later that Daniel had been watching his daughter struggle with the loss of her mother for 2 years, that he'd built walls around his heart so high he thought nothing could scale them, and that watching someone else experience public rejection had triggered something protective in him he thought he'd lost. Over dinner, the conversation flowed unexpectedly. Daniel owned a tech company but spoke about it with refreshing humility. "I create software that helps hospitals manage patient data more efficiently," he explained. "It's not glamorous, but it matters." When Emily mentioned she was a hospice nurse, his entire demeanor shifted. "That's remarkable work, truly." His voice carried weight. "My wife, Lily's mom, passed away 2 years ago. The hospice nurses who cared for her in those final weeks, they weren't just medical professionals. They were angels who held our family together when we were falling apart." Emily's throat tightened. "I'm so sorry for your loss. And I understand more than you know. My father is in stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The hospice team we work with has become like family." Their eyes met across the table, and something unspoken passed between them, the recognition of 2 people intimately familiar with loss, with the exhausting courage it takes to keep showing up when life keeps knocking you down. Lily, oblivious to the heavy moment, was drawing on her paper placemat. Look, I drawed our table. That's you, that's Daddy, that's me, and that's Mr. Trunk. We're all smiling because nobody is sad here. That's beautiful, honey, Daniel said softly, but his eyes never left Emily's face. As the evening progressed, Emily found herself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. Daniel had a self-deprecating humor that never felt forced, and Lily was accidentally hilarious, sharing stories about her kindergarten adventures with the dramatic flair of a seasoned storyteller. When Lily announced that her teacher, Miss Robertson, had eyebrows like caterpillars, Emily laughed so hard she snorted, which made Lily dissolve into giggles. But the real moment came when their server, an older woman named Margaret, brought the check. She'd been watching their table all evening with barely concealed delight. If you don't mind me saying, Margaret ventured, you three look like a real family. That little girl is lucky to have such a wonderful mother. Before Emily could correct her, Lily interjected. She's not my mommy. My mommy is in heaven. But Emily is really nice. Daddy, can Emily come home with us? We have ice cream, and she needs to meet my goldfish, Princess Bubbles. The table fell silent. Daniel looked mortified, Emily felt her cheeks burn, and Margaret quickly excused herself. But Lily just looked between them with 5-year-old logic that cut through all adult complexity. What? Lily asked innocently. You're both sad, but when we're together, nobody looks sad anymore. That means you should be friends. That's what Miss Robertson says, friends make the sad go away. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice rough with emotion. Lily, you can't just invite people. Actually, Emily interrupted, surprising herself, I'd love to meet Princess Bubbles. If the invitation still stands. Daniel's expression transformed from embarrassment to something Emily couldn't quite name, hope, maybe, or relief at not having the evening end. It absolutely stands. Fair warning, Princess Bubbles isn't much of a conversationalist, and our house is usually a mess of Lego and art projects. Sounds perfect to me. They drove separately to Daniel's house, a comfortable suburban home that was indeed scattered with toys but felt warm and lived in. As promised, they had ice cream, mint chocolate chip eaten straight from the container while sitting on the kitchen floor because Lily insisted that's where the best talks happen. Emily learned that Daniel coached Lily's soccer team despite knowing nothing about soccer, that he still set a place at the table for his late wife on her birthday, and that he'd turned down multiple promotions because they would have required travel time away from his daughter. When Lily finally fell asleep on the couch, clutching Mr. Trunk and wearing a chocolate mustache, Daniel carefully carried her to bed. He returned to find Emily washing their ice cream bowls, and something about the domestic simplicity of the moment made his breath catch. You didn't have to do that, he said quietly. I wanted to. Emily dried her hands, suddenly aware of how intimate this all was, standing in a stranger's kitchen at 10 p.m., having just spent hours with his daughter. Daniel, thank you. For tonight. For seeing me when I felt invisible. You didn't have to do that. Actually, I think I did. Daniel stepped closer, his voice earnest. When I saw you sitting there, looking exactly how I felt for months after Rachel died, like the world had moved on and left you behind, I just knew I had to say something. Maybe I was really rescuing myself. They stood in the warm kitchen light, two broken people who'd found unexpected comfort and shared understanding. Emily knew she should leave, knew this was all moving too fast, but instead she found herself saying, my father always says that sometimes God sends you exactly what you need dressed up as something else entirely. I thought I was going to a blind date. Maybe I was actually supposed to meet you and Lily. Daniel's smile was tender. I told Lily we were just going to dinner. Maybe we were supposed to meet you too. 3 months later, Emily sat in the same crimson booth where she'd been rejected, but this time Daniel sat across from her and Lily colored beside them. They'd returned to the restaurant as a tradition, a reminder that the worst moments can become doorways to the best ones. Margaret, their server, brought them their usual orders without asking, winking at Emily like they shared a beautiful secret. Emily's father had passed away 2 weeks prior, and she was still navigating the grief. But Daniel had been there through every moment, holding her hand during the final days, helping with funeral arrangements, letting her cry on his shoulder at 3 in the morning. Lily had drawn pictures for Emily's daddy in heaven, and insisted that he and her mommy were probably friends up there. "I've been thinking," Daniel said, reaching across the table to take Emily's hand. "Life is so unpredictable. We plan and hope, and then everything changes in an instant. But I've learned that sometimes the changes we don't plan are the ones that save us." "Daddy's being mushy again," Lily announced, not looking up from her drawing. Emily laughed through tears. "What are you saying, Daniel?" "I'm saying that I was rejected too, in a way. Life rejected my plans, my future, everything I thought I knew. And then you walked into our lives, or rather, you stayed when you could have left. You chose to see past your own pain long enough to share ice cream on our kitchen floor. You chose us." He squeezed her hand. "So I'm choosing you back. I'm choosing this, whatever this becomes. No pressure, no rush. Just a single dad and his daughter hoping that the woman who made us believe in happiness again might want to stick around." Emily looked at this man who'd rescued her from her lowest moment by simply offering kindness, and at his daughter who'd taught her that healing doesn't mean forgetting, it means making room for new joy alongside old grief. She thought about her father, who'd told her days before he died that he could go peacefully knowing she'd found good people to love her. "I'll take that offer," Emily whispered. "I'll take you both home, just like you took me home that first night." Lily finally looked up from her drawing, revealing a picture of 4 stick figures, 2 adults, 1 child, 1 elephant, standing under a sky full of stars. "I drawed our family," she announced matter-of-factly. And as Margaret delivered their food with tears in her eyes and Daniel smiled at Emily like she was his whole world, Emily realized that sometimes being rejected at a blind date was actually the universe redirecting you toward exactly where you belonged. Home wasn't a place, it was a single dad CEO who saw her worth when she couldn't, a 5-year-old girl who loved unconditionally, and a stuffed elephant named Mr. Trunk who approved of it all. Some love stories start with fireworks. This one started with kindness, grew through shared grief, and bloomed into the kind of forever that neither of them had dared to hope for anymore. And it all began because one man decided that a rejected woman deserved better than eating alone, so he brought her home.